Joining me today, somebody who needs no introduction, and I'll fill in a great introduction for him afterwards. You are the first person I have spoken to who was a Jeopardy clue, so congratulations.
Thank you.
We've got Dan Pink with us. Dan, I'm curious if you can give everybody your background when it comes to law school.
I went to college. I majored in linguistics. A couple years later, I went to law school, and I probably was a mistake for me to go to law school because I went to law school. I mean, sadly, having never talked to lawyers about what they actually did, and having never visited a law school classroom. So I went in just thinking that I knew what law school and lawyers was, and I had no idea. I mean, I wasn't miserable, but it just wasn't for me. And so I graduated from law school and started working in politics. Eventually became a political speechwriter. But I did take the bar exam 100 years ago, just because I didn't understand at that point the concept of the sunk cost fallacy. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, encouraged me to do it as well, thinking that I was like wasting my time if I didn't at least pass the bar. So I did that, but I never practiced law, and that's my journey.
I'm curious, what was it about law that you came to realize was not for you?
It's an interesting question. I think part of it was, well, there were a number of different things. Part of it was I didn't find a lot of the substance of it all that interesting, particularly in the practice of law. It struck me that you were doing like similar things over and over again. And even though some of the elements of it were novel, that the process, the thing that you were actually doing was relatively the same. I'll tell you one other story that I had about that got me onto that for when I was a first year, when I was like a summer associate at a big law firm in New York. And then the other thing that I think bothered me the most was that lawyers, and I hope feel free to push back, and I hope that your listeners troll me forever after this, but lawyers seem to be very good, and law school seems to attract people who are very good at deconstructing things, and the process of law school makes you even better at deconstructing things. And so what you had was this kind of group of people who were very good at saying why things wouldn't work, saying why things couldn't work, saying why things were wrong, looking at something that is wobbly and saying, that's wobbly, let's just knock it down. And they were very good at it and very smart. And I sort of came at the world with the exact opposite approach, which is like, hey, it's wobbly, let's see if we can make it work. Like my mode was like to construct things rather than deconstruct things. Not because I'm smarter or morally superior. It's just like, to me, it was like a difference between like being left-handed and right-handed. It just like wasn't my thing. And so I didn't really like that. The other thing is that I have a language to describe this right now. I didn't have it at the time. It's language that comes from some research in social psychology by a guy named Torrey Higgins. In that it's some motivation research where he talks about people being either prevention focused or promotion focused. So prevention focus means they want to stop bad stuff from happening. Promotion focus means they want good stuff to happen. They want to, trigger good stuff to happen. And again, one is not better than the other. Again, it's like being left-handed or right-handed. But law school was very prevention focused. The people there were very prevention focused, and it just wasn't my thing.
Well, so obviously you wrote a book about right brain people. So it's not necessarily a right left brain. It's not a focused creativity thing. It's a build up, tear down. Am I right in that?
That's some of it. I think that's some. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a number of different things. So one of them is build up and tear down. And even that language kind of tilts the scales too far. It's really just a matter of construction and deconstruction. Both are valuable. Okay. So if I hire a lawyer, all right, I want for certain kinds of things. In general, I want that lawyer to be prevention focused. I want that lawyer to be good at deconstructing. Okay. So it's not like those are not worthy skills. It's just that it just felt at odds with what I wanted to, how I wanted to approach the world. And so So that's really what it was. But the other thing about it, which you made me think of, is the routinization of certain kinds of law practice, which was gurgling barely when I came out of law school, and now I think is pretty fully not fully realized, but it's like on its way. And I'll give you an example of that. So when I was a summer associate at a large law firm in New York, it's like 30 plus years ago. Um, there was a law library, not surprisingly, because there were barely like the online stuff was happening then. But there was a physical library, and in the physical library there was a book, and it was something that was known in the day as a form book, and it was essentially a book of forms. It was like here's a form for this wasn't even. This is like a physical book. Here's a form for a landlord-tenant agreement. Here's a form for the bylaws to a corporation. Here's the form for an employment agreement. And what it was is like you could just photocopy it and fill in the blank, and then like type it out. Retype it in. It wasn't even a like a Word document. It was just. And I was thinking, golly. It's a good thing that that form book only exists in this law library of this elite law firm, because if it got out into the world, these lawyers would be in big trouble because a lot of what they're doing is just filling in the blanks of these forms. And now I think you see that even more robustly. The other thing, again, as I pile on, is that what I also found is that the I had an inkling of this is that I think that people who work in small law firms who run their own enterprises, I think that those kinds of lawyers are generally pretty happy. People who are prosecutors or people doing the prosecution on behalf of the state or even public defenders, those people I've talked to seem to be pretty happy. It's the ones who are miserable, the ones who are doing the kind of big law work, because they have no autonomy. They're working on tiny little shreds of things, and the way to succeed is to become the world's leading expert on the middle section of the ERISA statute. And that is not how I want to live my life.
See, it's interesting. I think I have a lot of small law firm owning colleagues that would disagree with you about their own happiness.
Okay, great. So,
Um, I
so,
want
so
to,
I mean, I'm not great.
yeah, yeah, no,
I appreciate. The disagreement is great. The fact that your colleagues are suffering is not great.
I totally understand. So before we transition to that, I have a question. You open your TED talk with going to law school being your actual biggest regret. Is it truly, or was that just for humor?
I don't know if I said that it was my biggest regret. I talk about it as a mistake. I think it was. I think it still was a mistake.
Okay.
Um, um, Again, not a colossal mistake. Not like, oh my God, I accidentally like ran over somebody. But there were economic costs, big time, and there were opportunity costs. The saving grace for me was that I met my wife in law school. And so, again, if I had it to do over again, and that was the price of meeting my wife, I would do it in a heartbeat. But otherwise, I don't think that I would have done, I don't think I would have gone. What I might have done is something that I find actually people learn more, they get more out of it, is wait 10 years. Go work and do something for 10 years. Go have a job, go have a career, go become a school teacher, go into the military, but do something adult for not for a 1 or 2 years, but for a substantial amount of time, and then go to law school. And I think then I think then one can get a lot out of it.
Do you feel like, I mean, because you were speech writing for Al Gore, I think, during this time. Was that like, do you think had you done law school after that, it would have been different for you?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure that I would have. I'm not sure that I would have. I'm not sure this is necessarily the case for me. That is I mean, if I hadn't gone to law school, I'm not sure exactly what path I would have taken.
Gotcha.
But I can imagine a path where I worked in politics out of college or something like that, or worked as a journalist out of college, and then said, "Wow, you know what? Like let's say journalism. If you look at a lot of the cover, a lot of my son, my 23-year-old son is a reporter, cub reporter for a paper in or outlet in Texas. And one of the things that you notice if you look at like local news coverage is that a lot of it runs through the legal system. And so it could have been that I would basically doing what my son is doing right now, become a cub reporter, worked as a working journalist, back in the days there were actual physical newspapers, worked as a newspaper journalist, noticed things going through the courtroom and said, wow, that'd be interesting to try that myself. And then go into law school with having actually a better sense of what lawyers actually did because I was interviewing them and writing about them. Having seen, this is just on like in criminal side, having seen trials and things like that, knowing actually what goes into it and knowing that how much of it is profoundly undramatic, and isn't what you see on TV. So it could have been that. Or if I'd gone to, done some other kind of profession, I might have actually been a better law student. I think I would definitely have contributed more to my classmates if I had some experience in something besides school, and might have gotten more out of it. But I don't know. It's a counterfactual. I haven't really thought about that much, except in the general sense that I probably would have been better off if I had done something for 8-10 years and then decided.
I, Listen, as somebody who went straight through and then practiced for 10 years, I agree with you. It would have been
Yeah.
so much nicer to have had more experience beforehand.
Don't you think that you would have learned more in law school if you had more experience?
So listen, I was more serious at, 21 years old, 22 in law school than I am now, but I was so dumb. That's strong. I was so not worldly.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. Like in my working life right now, just take something as mundane as contracts. Okay. In my working life right now, and for the last 25, 30 years, like I have to deal with contracts. Got to work it out. Okay. That would have been, if I having some experience doing that would have been better for any kind of commercial law course that you took, because something. You understand what it means. And so, having some experience out in the world would have been, I think, much more valuable. Even working in politics, or say working on Capitol Hill, would have given you, for a while, would have given you some kind of window into, oh, how are laws really made? What are regulations? How are they written? Why do they matter? How does the legislature interact with the administrative agencies and the executive branch? And just having a little bit more there would have, I think, made me a better learner. But also, I think it would have made me a better contributor to my classmates.
Let's get real for a moment. I'm terrible at most things. And so the goal for me as a firm owner, as a coach, and as a human is to stay in my zone of genius as often as possible. I used to think I could do that if I could clone myself. I realize now that that's terrible, because instead I want to find people who their zones of genius are my weaknesses, and then together we can create phenomenal companies. To do that, we put together the complete hiring process. We're also incorporating how to use AI and other technology to get better questions during the interviews, to find the right person in a faster, more efficient way. So if this is something that you struggle with, click the link below and purchase our complete hiring process to find amazing people to execute the vision you've always wanted.
Makes total sense. At least up until the last couple years, when at this point I have no idea how anything operates anymore.
Right. I hear you about that one.
So, you had mentioned that you see more smaller law firm owners being happier because of the autonomy. Can you talk to me more about that?
Well, I mean, the thing about the smaller law firm owners are, I mean, they have a hassle too. It's a different kind of hassle. And for me, I think that my read of the research is that people who, if you assume a baseline of hassle in doing any kind of work, okay, that I think that the hassle of running your own operation and maybe hustling for clients and things like that is less onerous over the long term than the lack of autonomy and the massive control, how controlled you are in big law, especially at your early stages. And if you think about the path in big law, you're essentially an indentured servant for 7 years, and then a few people get boosted up from being an indentured servant, and then they're basically responsible for business development in the same way that a small law firm is. And so, it's like, I mean, that's there. So to me, it's like you can choose that hassle, not having any autonomy, and then, um, you know, being in business development, or you can have some autonomy, be in business development from the get go, but also I think have a little bit of sense of purpose, and that your clients tend to be things that are that you your clients tend to be things that are a little bit more real rather than these giant corporations that are abstractions and you see only a part of it.
Well, so maybe that answers my next question. But in terms of that, you have the autonomy kind of tied back to the case generation. So from an intrinsic motivation standpoint to get out there and generate those cases, does that fall back on purpose, or is there something else that we need for that intrinsic motivation?
I think it's both. I mean, I think that there's a challenge. I think people can frame, say, business development, getting cases, getting clients, blah 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 blah. You can frame that as a burden. You can frame that as a challenge. And so that's one thing. You can frame that as, so it's a matter of your own way. It's a matter of the mindset that you bring to it. So you can say, this is a challenge. This is a pain in my ass, and it's probably going to vary from day to day. But if you frame it more as a challenge than as a pain in the ass all the time, you're probably going to be a little bit better at it and be less miserable doing it. If you say the purpose of generating these clients is to make money, I think that is very much like a fossil fuel. You need to keep shoveling coal into the furnace to keep it going. But if you say the purpose of this is to serve clients well, to help the little guy, and it depends on what kind of law you're practicing. If you're practicing family law, it's like, to help families sort out the most complicated issues of their life. If you're practicing business law, but for small businesses, hey, to help small businesses get off the ground and organize themselves properly and have some kind of sensible governance, then I think that you can have that kind of purpose. If you're working, again, I don't mean to trash big law, but if you're working in big law, it's like your job is to flood the other. If you're the litigator, flood the other, hopefully smaller party in motions and discovery requests, so that you bury them and they come to the settlement table. Or if you are doing transactional law, you're basically you're helping a hedge fund, or you're helping two companies merge, when you know that the bankers are going to be getting paid 5 times more than you're getting, and the executives are going to get even more than that. And we know from the research that roughly 80% of these mergers and acquisitions don't produce added value for the shareholders. So It's like,
But how do we help small business owners make that mental switch? Because like you talk so much about like businesses having the wrong motivation for their employees, but when you are the owner,
yeah.
how do you tweak your motivation for yourself?
Well, it depends. I mean, it's very hard to talk about this in general terms. I mean, it's going to depend from person to person. It's going to depend on their situation. I think there's a big difference between working for if you're running a 5-person personal injury practice versus you're running a 2-person family practice, family law practice, or whether you are running a 30-person a business law kind of practice. I think it really depends. But the main thing is I really do think it's important to have a sense of that what you're doing actually matters in the world, that what you're doing actually produces a good outcome. I don't mean necessarily truth, justice in the American way. I don't mean like putting bad guys in the pokey or exonerating people who've been unfairly accused, although that's great. But having a sense that, wait a second, but for my intervention, this business wouldn't have gotten off the ground, because I helped this business incorporate, I helped this business write this small corporation write its bylaws, I helped it structure itself in a way that it could be governed sensibly. But for my intervention, this spouse would have been taken to the cleaners by their spouse in a divorce settlement. But for my intervention, this negligent manufacturer of a product would have gotten away with things that are hurting people, and I stopped them. And so, it doesn't always have to be some kind of grand, exalted purpose, but I do think there has to be finding a point of the exercise is beyond simply they're going to pay me X dollars per hour, and that's going to allow me to pay my employees and my mortgage, which is a good purpose. But having something beyond that is equally important. Also, having if you have the freedom to turn down clients, to choose which clients you pursue, I think that's pretty powerful too. That's not the case in big law. Yeah, if I'm a fifth-year associate at a law firm, I can't say, oh, I don't really feel like working on that matter. I don't really like that client. If you're a small business person, you can say if it's not completely. I mean, sometimes you do have to hold your nose and take those kinds of clients, but other times you can say, no, you know what, that's not for me.
But so when you're talking about that finding, I mean, are we talking the job, the career, the calling, like from I think it's the study about janitors at a hospital. Like, is that the?
Well, that study, I know what you're talking about. That study is about job crafting, and that's basically taking a job that isn't necessarily that meaningful and finding some meaning in it. And so in that case, it was if janitors are encouraged to see themselves as part of like the overall care team of a hospital, they do their jobs better. They stick around a lot longer. So there's a little bit there's a little bit of that. I don't think it has to be anything as grandiose as a calling. I just think it's like, what's the point of the exercise? What am I doing here? Like, what am I going to do today? And I think with certain kinds of lawyers, particularly lawyers dealing with people in trouble, clients whom they know, you're helping out another human being. You're helping a human being get out of a pickle. Okay, that's you're not solving the climate crisis. You're not feeding the hungry. You're not preserving democracy. But you're doing something. You're doing something that matters. And one of the things that I got wrong in this book Drive that I wrote, where I talk about autonomy, mastery, and purpose, one of the things in a decade and a half of retrospect that I now see is that I got purpose wrong, or I got purpose incomplete, really. When I talk about purpose in that book, I talk about sort of making a difference in the world, doing something larger than yourself. And there's no question that is can be a ferocious motivator for people, can actually make up for some of the grind that people experience in any kind of profession. But there's another kind of purpose that is simply making a contribution, helping somebody out, solving somebody's problem. That is also very satisfying. So you can think of it as capital P purpose and small p purpose. I mean, capital P purpose is, I'm a defense lawyer and I'm making sure that constitutional rights for criminal defendants are upheld in this country. Right? That's capital P purpose. But small p purpose is, hey, this guy who's a criminal defendant had a really shitty life, and I don't think it's fair that they should go to be punished in this way. And if I can use my time and talent to mitigate that punishment a little bit, I think that's the right thing for this guy, and I'll help him out.
Do we need small p purpose to have big P purpose?
No, I think that I think it's more like you should. There are two things that people can draw on, and as a source of motivation. So going back to your law firm, there are two things that people can draw on, and I think that the capital P purpose is harder to find day to day. The small p purpose, I think, is easier to find day to day.
Interesting. Well, and then I noticed, I think it was your most recent video, you talked about like the 7 levels of motivation.
Yeah.
And I think purpose was 6 and freedom was 7.
Yeah.
So where does the freedom come into this?
Well, I mean, the freedom comes in when you are, and this goes to, I think, some pretty deep theory, not deep in the sense of sophisticated, but deep in the sense of like what's the point of the exercise of being a human being? Why are we on this planet? What constitutes a good life? And to me, it's partly a philosophical concept, but it's also rooted in some of the science, particularly what's called self-determination theory, is that I do think that the highest form of that human beings are meant to be autonomous and engaged, that it is our nature to be autonomous and engaged. And the world will beat that out of us if we let it. But the highest form of human existence, the human condition, is when we are self-directed, when we have some sovereignty over what we do and how we do it, when we have some freedom over our lives. And a way to think about this, and I think it goes to certain kinds of law practice, when we talk about something like autonomy, is to think about autonomy in terms of its opposite, which is control, right? So human beings have only two reactions to control. They comply or they defy. And I don't think that's a happy existence, being perfectly compliant or being perfectly defiant. I don't think that is what I don't think that's what we're meant to do. I do think that the highest form of human potential and the highest elevation for the human condition is to be engaged, is to be autonomous, engaged in directing your own life. So when we think about these things of autonomy, mastery, and purpose, by the nature of a video or the nature of a book, you're presenting things linearly. But in our lives, it's like a soup, and it's like they're all in there together, flavoring each other.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting because I think, so many lawyers have that egotistical asshole persona. But like when I talk to my clients, I think they're so selfless. Like they truly have never put themselves first, that they've lost autonomy in a totally opposite direction.
Your clients as law firm.
Sorry, I coach a bunch of attorneys
Right,
on
right, right,
living better
right.
lives.
That's what I wanted to make sure. So
Yeah.
tell me more about that.
So in terms of like my law firm owner clients that I'm trying to help them live a better life,
Right,
so many of them have been so selfless. They've taken on every single matter for the
right,
benefit of the other person.
right.
They're over executing on everything they've given to their employees for the benefit of that employee. They don't have a sense of self. They've lost autonomy as the catch-all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, working through them with that helps them see so much more joy in life.
I can see that. The other thing is that they also maybe have it could be that it's less a matter of autonomy or mastery or purpose than it is a matter of figuring out one of life's most important questions is figuring out what not to do. And I think there is a tendency among people who are quote unquote, I don't like the word, but I'm going to use it, which is why I'm using my air quotes. People who are high achievers um, tend to be also often are not always, but often are kind of people pleasers and always want to say yes to things, and that's a terrible idea.
How do people how do people focus? How do they say no? How do they empower themselves to be more selective?
Well, first of all, I think it comes with seasoning, and I think that there's a moment when you're younger where you should say yes to most things. And then I think that over time, I mean, I don't have a chart on this, but you can imagine a chart where your propensity to say yes goes down with age. And so when you're young, I think you should say yes to a lot of things and try them out. And I think as you get older, you should say no to more and more things. And eventually, there's for people in their lives, there's a moment where the curves cross, and you should be saying no to more things than you are saying yes to. I don't know. I think it's going to vary from person to person, but
Sure.
so I think that that's part of it. And then there are other sort of tactical things that you can do to help out on that. I mean, I keep a to don't list, alongside of my to do list. I've been doing this for years. I mean, I have it right here on my desk. I mean, I'm talking to you in my office in Washington. I have it I have it posted right here. Here's my to don't list for the year. So so I have a list of things that waste my time, suck my energy away, and I'm explicit about not doing that. I have there are I try to have as a heuristic. I try not to agree. I mean, it's actually um, yeah, it's actually on here too. I forgot about this. It's actually on my to don't list, which is you see here. Don't agree to any future obligation that you wouldn't do this week. So there's a tendency to say, oh, somebody asked me to do something in May. Well, I'm a nice guy from the Midwest. I'll say yes because I want to help people out. And then May rolls around and you want to shoot yourself because it's such a stupid idea that you're doing this. And so if you have as heuristic, don't agree to do anything that you wouldn't do this week. If somebody says, do you want to go do this thing and do you want to go to Sheboygan in Wisconsin? You want to go to Sheboygan in May? And I want to be a nice guy and May's far away. I say, oh yeah, sure. if I use this heuristic and say, would I go to Sheboygan on Thursday? I would say no freaking way. And so, and also there are ways to people are um, uh, people are more. You just got to get the habit of saying no if it's bumming you out to say yes to so many things, and doing too many things is blurring your focus. You got to establish the habit of offering up a kind no. And you have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. It's like practicing a tennis serve. You got to keep practicing and keep practicing the kind no.
Well,
And
all right, let me get.
people are understanding about that.
Well, so let me get kind of selfish with that question then.
Yeah.
How did I get you on this podcast?
How did you get me on this podcast? I don't remember.
Oh, through email.
Okay.
I gave you something like, "Hey, man, I'd regret not asking
Right.
more than being turned down."
But I
I've got
think I
this
said
pod-
no. I think I said no at some point, didn't I?
You did not. I was shocked.
Oh, really?
To be totally
Okay.
honest, I was like, "Oh, okay." Dan Pink said yes. This is great, and then you copied me with your assistant to get it booked.
Okay, great. So, yeah. So I don't know. Somehow you sneak through the filter there.
All right, cool. Good to know. Um,
Once my coaching clients have enough things off of their plate, now we get to go proactive. We get to design the ideal month for them to live over and over again. And don't worry, it's got the right amount of flexibility for fun stuff. But this is the foundation that we build everything upon. It's if you repeated these same 4 weeks over and over again, would you find the success you've always dreamed of? I want to give you this document totally for free. Just click the link below and check it out. And then if you need help implementing your ideal month or coming up with yours, you can always reach out to me for some one-on-one help.
I wanted to go back to something you were talking about before, though. You have, because I think one of the issues of saying yes when you're younger and then saying no when you're older. I talked to so many people that like had this weird obsession with something they never did, and then they finally did it 15 years later and realized they hated it.
Okay.
And so, like, can we talk to because usually we regret the things we didn't do. So
Right.
how do we regret the things that we did too late to realize we didn't like them? Is that a common thing?
I need it for instance because I'm not. It's not. I'm not clocking that. What do you mean?
Sure.
It's like someone says, I always wanted to be a baker and I postponed it. And at age 40, I took a baking class and opened a bakery, and it was a total disaster.
Yes, and in between that time, I read all these books on baking, and I went to these conferences, but I never did it. And then I finally did it and realized, I hate buying a boat. I think that's probably the best one. Everybody
Okay.
wants a boat, and then you buy
I
a
don't want a
boat, and
boat.
good. You know yourself better than most
Yeah.
people.
I don't know. I don't really have a grand theory about that. Although I have to say that in many cases, as with all these things, you have to ask yourself the compared to what question. And so, if it what's more, so let's say that I spent 10 years reading about baking and pined about being a baker, and then took a baking course, and then opened up a bakery, and I said I realized I hate baking. I think that that's painful. Is that any more painful than spending 40 years wondering what might have been if I had tried it? So I actually think that for many people, and I saw this when I did a giant survey on regret for my book, The Power of Regret. You had people who regretted taking a chance and have it go south on them, no question about it. But for every one of those, you had 50 people who didn't take a chance and regretted it. So it's a matter of what you want to, it's a matter of what you want to compare. It's a matter of what you want to compare it to. I think that the answer to this is, and it goes back to me, the error, the forecasting error, the analytic error I made going to law school, is the principle of surrogation. The principle of surrogation when we make decisions, which is finding someone to be a surrogate for you. And so, so what I would recommend to anybody who wants to go to law school is I'd say to them, go find 10 people who are practicing law right now, and ask and find out everything you can about their lives and what they actually do. Not what they do generally, what they did on Tuesday. Find that out and see if that's something that you want to do. And if it is, go for it. If it's not, think twice. Same thing is true. Find somebody who's in law school right now and find out what it's like. Not what it's going to lead to, not why they did it in the first place, but what it is like being in their shoes right now. And I think that, so if you go back to our friend the baker, my hunch is that a lot of the people who do stuff like that and then regret it, haven't gone and said, what's it really like to be a baker? Holy crap, I have to get up at 4 in the morning to start baking. That's a big pain. Oh my gosh, I'm in this hot room with an oven all the time. Go and find out people who've done it. Surrogation, 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 surrogation. That to me is a way to at least reduce a lot of those kinds of errors that we make.
Yeah, I love that so much. So like I started as a prosecutor and then I opened up my own firm and I interviewed a bunch of defense attorneys about the work and they sent me motions, they sent me forms, all that stuff. I did not ask them a single question about their lives. Come to realize so many of them would like, "Oh man, I would have gone back to the prosecutor's office if they offered me a job again."
Yeah, I mean, again, there are different there are different ways that we move through the world, and there are different ways that we understand the world. In social psychology, it's known as construal levels. So it's basically you can construe things abstractly and conceptually, or construe them concretely. One is not better than the other. They're just two different lenses on. They're two different lenses on things. If we scrutinize things too concretely, we sometimes miss the big picture. But if we scrutinize things too abstractly, we sometimes miss the lived truth of what it's like Thursday at 3 o'clock. And I think it's important to interrogate both of those. If someone says, someone could say, oh, you know what, I really want to. I haven't heard this before a gazillion times. I heard this a gazillion times. I really want to write a book. Okay, because what they do is they look at a book like the books I have behind me. It's like, God, that'd be really cool to have all these pages in a cover with my name on it that people buy. That seems awesome. And you know what? That's okay. That's a good part of it. But that's not being a writer. You want to know what being a writer is? Being a writer is come with me to my office and have me grind out 800 words today when I don't feel like it. Then come with me tomorrow while I grind out where I read over the previous 800 words and realize that 400 of them suck. But I still have to write another 800 today. And there are other things that I might want to be doing. And there's no one to talk to. And I have the cursor blinking at me. All right? That's what it is to be a writer. So, you have to surrogate. You have to talk to people who do what they do and say, I think that in some ways any kind, we shouldn't, whether we're practicing law, whether we're doing anything, we shouldn't be looking for a profession that just endlessly delivers us rays of sunshine and candy canes. No profession is like that. The question is, do you do something that has a point? Do you have a modicum of autonomy over what you do? Are you getting better at something that matters? And are you choosing the torture that you want to endure? And the torture that you want to. So at least if you're hustling for business as a proprietor of a small law firm, at least you're choosing the torture. No one's choosing it for you. If you're a writer trying to grind out words every single day for months, if not years, that's the torture. That's the torture that I've chosen for myself.
Spoken like a true lawyer. That's the torture that you've chosen.
Yeah. So but I think that in many cases for lawyers, it isn't chosen, particularly when it comes to the big law firms. People just glide in there because the system is built to get people jobs in there. And they're not, I don't think there's anybody who says, I don't think there's any kid out there 14-year-old who is saying, I think they're 14 years old, 14-year-olds out there saying, what would be really cool? I would like to be a prosecutor and stand up for people, stand up for justice and make sure that people who have committed crimes are fair, are dealt with properly. I think the 14-year-olds who are saying that. I think they're 14-year-olds who are saying, what would be really cool to write a book. I don't think they're 14-year-olds out there saying, what would be really cool to become an expert in structured finance and advise companies on tax structures that allows them to do structured finance more tax efficiently. I don't think there's a single 14-year-old out there who's thinking that.
So, but we can't say that it's a failure to end up in those careers, right? Like, I mean,
I didn't say it was a failure.
Right. So like as they live life, what draws them to that job?
Money
Okay.
and the path of least resistance. You realize. I mean, again, I'm talking. The thing about people who start small law firms is they have to do something. They have to hustle. They have to come up with an idea. They have to figure stuff out. But if you're going to an elite law school, and if you're going to a top 20 law school, if you're going to University of Chicago Law School, you have big law firms coming on campus. They're taking you out to dinner. They're giving you an easy path to a job. You don't have to hustle at
Mm,
all. You just have to freaking show up to the interview, put on a nice set of clothes, be reasonable polite at dinner, and it's easy. So people will take the path of least resistance, especially when the path of least resistance results in a very large paycheck.
that makes sense. Obviously everybody's reason to change from that is different, but do you see some common things where they have that wake up call like this is too easy but not autonomous enough or
I don't know. I mean,
okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, anecdotally, I mean, you do see a lot of people wash out of the big law firms. You see a lot of people who go to law firms and say, "Oh my gosh, you know what? I think these prosecutors, at least until recently, have been are much happier than I am. Maybe I can do that, even though it's less money." I think you see some of that. What you also see, one of the things that I've seen is people my age. I mean, I just turned 60, retiring. They're working at a big law firm from the time they get out of law school, and at age 60, they're like, "Okay, I'm done with this. I've made a lot of money, but
Mm.
I'm not going to do this another moment."
But you say that from the standpoint of people that have found that purpose aren't going to retire?
No, I found that no, I think that people who take the path of least resistance for something that isn't that intrinsically interesting and is not interesting, meaningful, but is lucrative, when they have an option, they leave.
Gotcha. So I mean, you've been doing this for decades. Where do you see this whole concept going now with AI? Do you think
Which
AI makes
concept?
uh, finding happiness, having autonomy, finding purpose? I know you did a video a while ago. You had ChatGPT like just basically roast you.
Yeah.
It was
Well, I mean, I wanted ChatGPT to sort of help understand where I was falling short. It just ChatGPT is a kind of a truth teller. And so, I mean, again, it's just the AI is a tool. I don't think it changes. I don't think it changes human nature and what people desire any more than smartphones did, any more than uh, a search engine did, any more than the internet did. I mean, it might it might surface it might surface. Um, you might put things into sharper relief, maybe. I don't know. So people who are slightly more prone to addiction in the broad sense might be more likely to scroll on their phones more than people are not, and then that
Mhm.
propensity might not have come out, but for smartphones, I don't know. Um, I think there's a chance that there'll be significant upheaval in what lawyers do. Um, uh, so if you go back to that ancient example of the form book, well, now you can just you don't even need the form. You just say to AI, I'm doing an employment agreement with Jordan, and I'm going to pay him this amount of money, and I want it to be under the laws of blah 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 state, and I want to make sure, or maybe not even an employment agreement. Let's just say it's like a contract for services. I say to ChatGPT or Claude or even one of the specialized legal AI things. I'm doing this contract. Here, I'm going to pay Jordan such and such a time. This is the term that it's going to last. These are the things that I'm concerned about. Um, Tell me what state I should do it in. What else I should be looking for? Do I need an indemnification clause? Make sure that it's a work for hire, and it'll crank that out. I don't even have to fill in the blanks of that form book.
Well, but I think you can take that same concept to so many other things. Like, how do you start your own business? How do you, where do you have to register for it? What kind of insurance should you be looking for? Like, I think empowered a lot of people to cover over excuses they were making before about why they couldn't do it.
Fair point. I think that's a fair point. Yeah.
How do you see mastery, right? So this is one of the three things: we autonomy, mastery, and purpose. How do small business owners know that they are developing mastery?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have a good I'm not sure I have a good response to that. I do think that the it's important, particularly for proprietors, to take a moment during their day to pause, or during their week to pause and just assess that. So, where did I make progress this week? Is that, you can have like a weekly recap. I mean, I do this at the end of every day. What are three ways I made progress today? And just three, nothing grandiose. And it could be that, like for me, like for instance, today, as I look at my if I look at my list, I had some like office equipment stuff that I'd been postponing. And finally just said, I'm going to take care of it today. Okay. So I got that done. Second, it's like, that doesn't change the world, but it actually gave me a sense of progress. So, charting your progress, and then also, you know, looking at, in a more regular way, uh, what what did I learn? What did I learn this week? What was I able to do this week that I couldn't do last week? Those kinds of things.
Well, and I think
But
that's
again, the repertoire, the universe of things that proprietors of law firms do is vaster than, say, what an associate at a big law firm would do, because they're dealing with people. They're like developing. They're uh, serving clients. They're developing new clients. They're dealing with employees. They're doing things like the practice of law, whether it is writing a motion or negotiating a contract or appearing in court.
well, I think that's kind of the interesting part about autonomy. Like you have the autonomy to make your own scorecard
Yeah,
and then develop mastery against it.
exactly.
Are
I mean,
there
that's a better answer to your question.
Oh, well, thank you. I guess I had the benefit of asking the question.
Yeah.
I'm in a bunch of online groups, and there's always these people that talk about how miserable it is for their firm and how much they hate running it. And people give some really helpful advice. But I have not come across a book that incorporates all those things in one place. So I wrote it. Stories of some of my coaching clients. In there, though, you're also going to find our specific meeting agendas. You're going to provide how to put together a marketing plan. I really, truly poured my heart and soul into this book. I hope you'll check it out in the link below and enjoy it, and ultimately get a chance to run the law firm you've always dreamed of.
What questions have I not asked you that are helpful along this topic? This small law firm owner, helping them find more self-motivation, autonomy, mastery, purpose, and ultimately happiness.
I think there are a few tactical things that people can do. One of them is encourage their employees, if they have employees, and themselves, to really take a moment each day to think about progress. That we have a lot of evidence that progress is the probably, in terms of day-to-day motivation, is probably the single biggest motivator on the job. This is the work of Teresa Mobile at Harvard Business School. So being intentional about taking about progress. I think there's also something to be said for um, having conversations with people about why you're doing things, rather than simply how to do them, rather than how to write that motion. Why are we taking this case in the first place? How to deal with that negotiation. Here's why we're representing this client in the first place. So having more conversations about why, charting one's progress, and then also, being intentional about what, if you think about any white collar job or any running any kind of business, it is just this. It's a bundle of tasks, and many of them are going to be not that great. And so it's a matter of, am I choosing the suffering that am I choosing my own suffering rather than having my suffering foisted on me? So for instance, when I come in to write in this office, I'm choosing that suffering of staring at a blank page every single day, and not knowing whether something's going to work. I'm choosing that suffering. It's a suffering that I have chosen. If I were being told by a boss to, I don't know, research ways to pierce the corporate veil in Colorado, when I have no interest in doing that. I'm not choosing that suffering. Someone else is choosing that suffering for me.
But you've also talked about like making the New York Times bestseller list and then being like, all right, well now am I going to be on it next week? Like, so how are you?
That's a different story. That's that's
That's a
that's
difference.
that, that's basically that's basically why we should do things for the sake of doing them. You shouldn't write a
Okay.
book. You shouldn't write a book to get on the bestseller list. That's a fool's game. Um, what you should do, you should write a book because you are choosing the torture that you want, and there are moments when, again, I don't want to go too dark here. There are moments when I come into this office to write, and some days it's burdensome, and some days it's suffering, and I don't want to do it. There are other days where I think of something, a thought comes to my head, a turn of phrase comes in my mind, and I don't know where it came from. It's kind of amazing. It's exciting when I figure something out and I'm able to explain it clearly. That's absolutely exciting. When I make sense of a world that when I make sense of something, a piece of research or the way that the world works that was murky before, and suddenly it's clear to me, and I can explain it to other people. That's amazing. Now, again, that's a facet of it. The idea, but if I were writing, I write in order to get those moments. I mean, I want to sell books. There's no question of it. There's no question of it. But selling books is not the source of my happiness. Doing good work is the source of my happiness.
But do you find that like having those days where it is bad make you appreciate those days where it's great that much better?
Probably. Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think you have to go into with the expectation about most days are going to be tough. Most days you're going to be grinding it out. I mean, again, forgive me. I mean, I've gone, 50 minutes without using a sports analogy here, but so let me drop one on you here. It's like being an athlete. I mean, do people know what athletes do? Steph Curry will take his three pointers and hit a game-winning shot, and that's going to represent some sliver of the pie chart of how he spends his time. But he's also going to be working out. He's also going to be training. He's also going to be grinding in order to get to that point. And so, you have to have derive some kind of pleasure from the things that are not inherently pleasurable.
Well, and I think that's one of the issues that law has because you have the adversarial nature of the system, but then a judge is making the decision or a jury is instead of like, if you and I are playing basketball, one of us will block a shot or not, like you get direct feedback a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that for trial lawyers, there is some kind of feedback. I mean, you get, the judge is telling you whether the objection is valid or not. The jury is telling you whether you made a compelling case. Um, um,
But I've also seen the absolute worst defense argument I've ever heard be the winner. And
yeah.
I was not a lawyer in the case, so I'm
Have
not
you ever have you ever been on a jury?
I have never been impaneled because it was always like my former colleagues and the judge was my boss, but I've been the first batch of jury duty.
I've been on two juries, and
And
it completely shook my faith in the jury system.
okay, just because people get caught up on the silliest things or
Um, so many reasons. So one of them is just how inefficiently the trials were run. That's one thing. Um, they could have been done much more quickly and efficiently. They used the jurors' time and the litigants' time. I just think there was absolutely no regard for the value of any of the parties' times except for the judge, him or herself.
mm,
That's one thing. Not the
but the
most
judge
important.
has autonomy.
That's not the most important thing. But the most important thing is that we had. I mean, one of the cases that I was on, it was a civil case. It should never have been in court. It was a complete waste of everybody's time to be in court. It's the kind of thing it was a dime store negligence case that should have been settled by insurance. And so it was, I think it was a colossal waste of public dollars to even have the case in court. What's more, they were relying on testimony, eyewitness testimony, which we know is completely unreliable. Even more unreliable when these eyewitnesses are describing events that took place 3 years ago because it's
Mm.
so sluggish. So that's a joke. So we know that eyewitness testimony, for instance, is essentially useless. So that's it. And then what happened in this case was your lawyer crowd will appreciate that in the civil case was a negligence case. And in the District of Columbia, where the trial was held, we have a law of contributory negligence, which, just to refresh everybody's memory, means that if I accuse you of being negligent, that is, you didn't shovel your walkway, all right, and I fell, and I guess in Hawaii you don't have shoveling walkways or whatever, but imagine you have snow, you're in a snowy place, and you don't shovel your walk, and I slip and fall, all right, and I say you're negligent, you didn't, but in the District of Columbia we have something called contributory negligence, which is if I contribute even a little bit, if I am wearing ballet slippers that I've just taken out of the freezer to walk on, okay, so I shouldn't be wearing ballet slippers in the cold weather, right? I'm partially negligent, then that extinguishes all of your negligence, right? All you lawyers know that. So that's the law in the District of Columbia. And the lawyer explained that to the jurors over and over again. This is the law. It might seem a little unfair, but this is the law in the District of Columbia. And so we get into the jury room, and to me, it's like, oh, it's clear it's contributory negligence. They're both idiots here. One person was negligent, and the person who's the plaintiff is also, partly to blame here. And so the law says there's no negligence here. And after sitting through days of this trial where we had multiple lectures on contributory negligence, when you say that in a jury room, 7 or 8 jurors are like, that's not fair. No, what are you talking about? No, that's the law. We've heard that like 3 or 4 times in this trial. But that's not fair. So,
welcome to the law.
Yeah. So there you have it. But I mean, I guess the other thing about it is that we have, and I was in a criminal case where there were, the possibility of taking away somebody's liberty based on the eyewitness testimony of teenagers in a high intensity situation 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know.
It's a tough system, but I always go back to like the Winston Churchill, although it wasn't talking about the justice system, right? Like it's the worst system, but
that's what I was saying before. Compared to what? I came back and after that, I said, guys, I said my kids, like, don't do everything you can to avoid being a criminal defendant in a jury trial.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, from your ChatGPT roast, I gave you like a 90-day sprint, a 1 year, a 3 year. How is that going?
It's going. I mean, it was kind of bracing this thing that I did, but it was illuminating. I mean, again, I didn't buy everything that ChatGPT said, but I think it gave me some feedback in a harsh way that people closer to me would not have given me.
Well, I love the relatively scandal free, and you were like, what does that mean? Like, what is the quasi scandal that I have avoided?
Yeah. I mean, so again, you have to take it with a grain of salt, but it's another way. I did that video to help say this tool, which is this very, very powerful tool, can be used in a lot of different ways.
Well, and I think self-reflection using AI as a thinking partner, and so the self-reflection of
100%. 100%. I think that Microsoft has the best term for this, which is that AI is a co-pilot. I don't use Microsoft's AI system, but conceptually, I think that lawyers, writers, everybody can look at these AI systems as a co-pilot, or as a first mate. You're still the captain.
I like that analogy. So, what can our listeners do to support you?
You can go to my YouTube channel, Daniel Pink TV. You can also go to my website, danpink.com. I've got a newsletter and all kinds of free resources.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us. This really was great. I really appreciate it.
All right, Jordan. Thanks for the great questions. I appreciate it.
Have a great day. This week, joining us is John Strohmeyer. John's the proprietor of Strohmeyer Law PLLC in Houston, helping families navigate estate planning, tax, and probate matters so they can leave no unfinished business, registered trademark. He's board certified in tax law and in estate planning and probate law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. He's a fellow of the American College of Trust and Estate Counsel and host of the 5-Star Counsel podcast, exploring what elite client service looks like in modern law firms. A former Four Seasons hotel night manager, John helps lawyers elevate client experience while meeting their ethical duties and demonstrating competence. Outside of work, he runs marathons, collects Legos, and hangs out with his rescue dogs, Griswold, Billy, and Tank. Thanks for joining us today, John.